We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role.
Hey, welcome to another episode of We're Not Marketers. This is Zach, the sales water boy. And I say this with a question because, like I said, every time, and Gab said yes, I forget the title. But with that in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Gab and then to Eric, and then before we kick off our next guest.
You have too many titles. But yeah, Gab Bugeaud, sales deck intern. Again, doing sales deck. I just did one on Sunday. Yeah, still doing sales deck. I'll pass it up to Eric.
Yes. Season 3, Franken-Marketer, Eric Holland. And Zach, I just got to say, I still don't get tired of hearing you guess which title you still have for the day. It's been, I don't know how many episodes now, but I love it. Don't change.
Behind the scenes fact, that gives you an insight into my state of mind, hence why I'm wearing a baseball cap, because you do not want to see the hair that looks underneath. But fortunate for everyone else, this is an audio podcast, so you won't be seeing that. But enough about my grooming hygienics here. We got to kick it off with our special guest here. And we got Megan Pratt. She's the founder of Product Marketing House. And prior to being a fractional product marketer extraordinaire, she started her career from the marketing background. Fun fact, we don't know the answer she's going to give us, whether to our inaugural question, but she's grown throughout the ranks from product marketing, senior product marketer, director of product marketing, before striking out on her own in fractional product marketing. What's unique about that is that this was prior to the layoff trends that we've seen in the last 18 months, where many product marketers chose to go fractional as a response to what was happening in the job market then and currently right now. So we're really excited to have this conversation with Megan to really understand, it's like, why would you might consider fractional product marketing, and what does it take to kick off a successful consultancy in doing so? But with that in mind, Megan, my goodness, it's a joy to have you on the show with us. Our number one fan?
I think so. I think I might be your number one fan. I like the hoodies, at least. I like the merch.
That's a win.
Absolutely.
I selfishly also love the merch.
That's the mark of good merch. And maybe that's another podcast topic. The mark of good merch is if you would wear it.
Yeah, like, why make stuff we're not going to wear anyways?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who needs another Yeti mug? Give me a nice cozy hoodie all day.
Thank you. I
don't know what the beef about Yeti mugs, but Yeti mugs are great quality. I won't say no to Yeti mug. Maybe I'm the only person to say that.
Is this the first hot take of the podcast? Hopefully the first of many more hot take sound bites we'll get out of this.
I want to crack this open. I want to crack this open though, Zach, because let's say you get 10 Yetis. Are you excited for that 10th Yeti as you were for the first Yeti?
My utility curve still maintains at the same rate of speed for every Yeti. It's very
and you never run out of cupboard space? Because I'm saying
no, because
I want to flip the question back to Emily then about sweatshirts. Do you still get excited for the 10th
Megan?
We're Not Marketers hoodie that you did for your first We're Not Marketers hoodie?
If it's a different design, give it to me. I'll wear it. I wear a ton of hoodies.
See, that's my point.
See, this is where we align here, Megan. See, you get unlimited utility from sweaters. I get unlimited utility from Yeti mugs, no matter the brand. Okay, I won't put, because someone's gonna send me a wild brand for Yeti. I'm like, yo, I can't rock this, y'all.
Right. It does depend on the brand and the logo. But Do you drink a lot of coffee? Are you a coffee drinker?
I'm a tea drinker.
Okay.
You don't want to see me with coffee.
Same. I'm a green tea girly all day long for everybody's best interest. I just personally like the Awala and the Stanleys better. That's why I'm like, get the Yetis out of here. You know what I mean? It's a style thing.
Is it because the Stanley survived that fire, that fiery car crash? That's why we're all about the Stanley now? Or were you always a day one Stanley?
Can I be honest? It's the colors.
Yeah, please.
It's the style. It has nothing to do with the utility. It could be like spilling all over, but if it's hot pink or something, then I'll wear it. I'll use it. Has nothing to do with the utility. I have to be totally honest.
That's an example of knowing your audience.
It's true.
No,
yeah, let's deconstruct the Stanley situation. They're doing some great product marketing over there.
I got the Stanley right here too. But Megan,
got my own.
Look at you. Oh, okay. So you know what? If there's ever a sequel to The Matrix, I think that the next character will be named Megan, because you're definitely seeing the future of these trends here. And with that in mind, we'd love to pivot over to Gab, because Gab's got a question for you to see what does this mean for product marketers. And Gab, I think you know what that question is.
Yeah. So you talked about Yeti, but what do you think about Hydro Flask?
I have a couple of those in my cupboard too. I have a lime green Hydro Flask. So if it keeps my water cold, I do like it if it keeps my water cold in this hot St. George heat. If it's going to sit in my car and I can pick it up, it still has ice in it, I'm down. Yeah.
Perfect. But Megan, are product marketers actually marketers? Why or why not?
Okay, so this is one of those questions that I think requires some nuance here. I think it's a yes and for me. I think we have to have the skills that other styles of marketing require. So a good ABM person who can really know the audience and connect the audience to good messages, we need that skill too. A good social media marketer who can write pithy copy and know the ins and outs of different platforms, we need that skill too. So we need the skills of these other disciplines. And I think we need to have like that 5,000 foot view that comes above all of those disciplines and channels and kind of the outcomes of marketing in order to see how they all connect and how they connect back to the main stories that we're trying to tell and the people that we're trying to tell them to.
I like that.
Okay. So it sounds like a few different things. Like one, the storyteller aspect, two, like knowing the audience overall. And it sounds like there was a third one you mentioned here that I feel like I was missing here. Or was it?
Yeah, so it's stories and the people that we're telling them to. And I think understanding how those connect to the different channels too. I think one of my biggest strengths as a product marketer is that I didn't start as a product marketer. I started in an agency and then I moved into more of a growth marketing, from a growth marketing perspective, managing lots of different campaigns. So I know what it takes to run a good campaign. And I now also have the basics of connecting those campaigns to a product launch or a specific persona-based campaign, or we've got to make sure that we're refreshing our messaging and positioning and all of that. And how is that going to flow out through all of these campaigns? So really I almost see the product marketer as like a mini CMO. I think product marketers also make good CMOs, but I think a product marketer has to be able to see everything all the time, all at once.
So your answer would be, even if there's nuance, it would be a yes more than a no?
I think so, yeah. I think if it's really hard, I think in this day and age to put people in boxes. I think more and more, especially as we get into the topic of layoffs and like people that stay having to do multiple different roles, it really is hard to quantify. This role is a traditional marketer. This role is a product person. This is a salesperson. Everybody's doing everything. But I think product marketers are more marketers than they're not. And I think a product marketer also has to have a special sauce. And I think it's that special sauce that makes product marketing misunderstood, because I don't think it's very easy for organizations and for people who've never done product marketing. So maybe like an old school CMO or like a founder of a software company to understand what is that special sauce. They just think, oh, we can hire a tech person to be our product marketer. They understand the product. Or, oh, we can hire someone who's done marketing but never product marketing and they can do marketing. It really is at that intersection where the magic happens.
Tell us more about that special sauce.
I want to hear more about this.
Is it unique? Is it unique to the person, or is this like a special sauce that we got to go travel to our next PMA summit to unlock if we're product marketers?
I think that it's specific to the person. And this is why I tell product marketers that I speak with who maybe want to go fractional, but maybe you're just looking for their next role. You really have to do a positioning exercise for yourself. And you have to understand, where do your skills lie? What are the things you are really good at and you're really passionate about? And how can you prove that you're really good and passionate about those things? For me, I had to sit down and think about, okay, what are the things that I've done that I've really enjoyed? Also, what are the things that I've done that I've really hated? For me, I really hate measuring campaigns. Like anything having to do with analyzing metrics, looking at Google Analytics, being in the back end of campaigns, I can do it, but I will want to poke my eyeballs out while I am doing it. But on the flip side of that, if I'm writing copy for those ads, if I'm thinking about who those ads are going to go to, if I'm writing posts like social media posts, but not having to maybe measure them, I love those types of things. I love the people aspect of marketing. I like really connecting with the psychology of how our messages are going to be perceived and who's going to really enjoy the things that we're selling. I like thinking about that aspect. And so for me, that makes me a specific flavor of product marketer. And I think there are lots of different flavors of product marketers. I think there are product marketers who are like, I am exceptional at understanding technical topics. Maybe you're like a MarTech product marketer and you're really good at understanding how marketing technology works and being able to communicate those technical specifics, but maybe you're not great at writing a blog post. Totally okay. Let's just be like upfront and honest about the type of product marketer that we are, where our skill set lies, and be able to pitch ourselves accordingly. And I think the flip side goes for organizations as well. I think a good marketing leader should be able to sit down and understand, what do I want this person to be able to do? What are the core responsibilities for this person? Understanding that nobody can do everything. Is this person just going to be like a launch coordinator, a GTM coordinator? That's great. I need a really great planner, somebody who's got their finger on the ClickUp board and can update everything, make sure everybody's on the same page. Love that. If we want someone who's like really elbows deep in messaging and positioning, and that's going to be their skill set, let's go find that person. But yeah, I think just like no one product is for everybody, no one podcast is for everybody, no one product marketer is for everybody or every situation. And I think we just need to be honest that product marketing is a very nuanced role and a very nuanced skill set. And it's getting more so. It's getting more confusing to be a product marketer, I think.
Yeah. I like everything you said, but I'm curious if I'm a PMM, I'm listening to the pod and I'm trying to figure out what are the ingredients needed to create my special sauce.
Yeah.
What would you say those ingredients are, or at least in what environment can I figure those out for myself?
No, it's a great question. And I think as someone who's like hired younger product marketers and trained them, and I'm writing content on LinkedIn for that specific skill set, that's something I think about a lot. I think there are I almost think about it when you're playing video games and you're like choosing your fighter and there's like the different levels at the top of the screen. This person has quick reaction times. This person has a really heavy punch, and there's a spectrum to it. I think product marketers are the same thing. And there are like common skills that everybody's going to have kind of a variance of. And I think the common skills that we think about are like, one, how can you execute cross-functional go-to-market motions? And what I mean by that specifically, because I think go-to-market is another nuanced topic. Everybody's using the term go-to-market to mean different things. What I mean specifically about that is how well do you coordinate with all of the different functions of the business, from product and development being like on one end of the spectrum of building the thing, all the way out to sales and customer success and your marketing team on the other end of the spectrum to selling the thing. And there's a lot of things to think about along the way. How well can you coordinate that process between this thing is very technical and we need to decode this for our audience. We need to understand who it's for, and we need to decide the channels we're going to use. We need to write the content for those channels. We need to train the sales team. How well do you coordinate those things? So that's one thing, cross-functional go-to-market motions. I think the second thing is messaging and positioning for me includes both the strategic work that's required to figure out who is this thing for, why should they care, what are the situations that and the pain points that we might want to hit on here. And then messaging being like, how are we going to speak about it? All the way down to maybe the product marketer is the person that's able to write that specific content. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Maybe they're just writing really great product briefs that help quantify those things and get it out to the people that can put those messages in market. So that's the second thing, messaging and positioning. I think the third thing that I like to think about when I think about product marketing, and I think this one is a little bit more nebulous, but I think this is really required if you're going to be a product marketing leader, is how do you speak about product marketing? How do you educate your internal audiences about where product marketing belongs? And how well do you understand like product marketing best practices and frameworks? And how well can you maybe pull those out of your arsenal and put them into practice? A good product marketing leader will have kind of a pitch for, hey, product team, I understand that we haven't had this relationship with product marketing in the past. I really do need to be involved at this point in your process, and here's why. Here's the value to you. Hey, sales team, I understand you've been writing your own sales decks, and that's fantastic. I don't want to take away the fun that you have with your sales decks, and we're trying to unify our messaging, and here's why. Here's the value of that to you. So being able to speak about product marketing and understand product marketing in your own mind and get everybody on the same page, that's a really tricky one, but it's absolutely required for a successful like head of product marketing or lead of product marketing.
So it sounds a lot like that you're selling the value of product marketing to different internal audiences, knowing what they care about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I want to make it clear too that like my experience as a head of product marketing has largely been in startups. So like right around that Series B marker when people tend to say, oh, we've got budget to officially hire a head of product marketing. That's been my experience. So I, in my head of product marketing roles, was the first leader of product marketing that the organizations had hired. And so I think that's why that piece is particularly important to me, because that's incredibly important in startups. And in particular, it's incredibly important as that first person in setting that groundwork.
It just made me, I was starting to chuckle inside because I just thought about a head of sales coming in and be like, hey, here's what we're going to do as sales. You don't have to do that. Good old Megan doing the hard work. And I'd actually say I like that call out because I haven't actually thought about that as like a skill set or a superpower, in this case, secret sauce. But the ability to make sure that the function itself of product marketing is well established, well known, respected across the organization. When I just look at myself transparently, I think that's something I would like to improve upon, and just super insightful that I think out of all of our conversations, we haven't actually heard that call out yet. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a meta concept. Like, how do you not only do the work, but talk about the work while you're doing the work and get other people on board with the work that you're doing? That's, I think, though, what makes a true leader who can make a difference in an organization from a product marketing perspective.
And once you understand that, it's a lot better for your career and the direction you want it to take, because you won't just see, oh, a PMM position, let me apply on it. You will try to understand the different facets of how can I thrive in that role based on my skill set. Some people are heavy hitters, but it takes more time to charge a hit. If we go back to the video game example, some are more fast but less damage. So I think once you understand that, it becomes your secret sauce, but it also becomes like a radar that helps you get in the right role, or as Zach and I and you as well, able to understand, okay, how do I want to tackle that fractional work? What among my personal skill set, what I like to do, and figuring out companies that would require that type of work as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think then understanding that aspect of it really helped me make the transition to freelance and fractional work. Because if you think about it, that's basically the same thing as sitting in a client meeting and trying to understand if I'm going to be the best fit for the client, and then being able to pitch myself to that client. Because a lot of the time I'm pitching myself to, sometimes I work with VCs who are hiring me on behalf of their clients. They vaguely understand messaging and positioning, but they don't understand the full value that a product marketer can bring. And so I want to make sure they understand that full entire value beyond messaging and positioning. And sometimes I'm talking to founders who, again, are like, I saw on LinkedIn that I need messaging and positioning, so help me. And I want to take us down back to the ground floor and say, okay, what exactly do you need? Who told you need messaging and positioning? What are the pains you're experiencing? And then I'm able to bring in my pitch of, okay, here's where I fit. I'm a good fit for you. Or, hey, it actually sounds like you need a fractional CMO, or you need a growth marketer, and let me connect you with that person. So being able to make that pitch internally prepared me to make that pitch externally when I was ready to make that switch.
In this specific instance, you said earlier that product marketers are marketers, but these examples you're giving here sounds like you're a lot more of a
I was going to say,
salesperson.
Zach, is she an AE in disguise here?
Don't put me in that category. I love salespeople, but you can't put me in the salespeople category.
You're a closer. That's a good thing, because
you're not a salesman.
Yeah, because you're doing that discovery, so that's what I was hitting at. But Megan, let's raise the stakes here a little bit here, because I don't think it was from your background, it's a very seamless, hey, I want to go fractional. Like in 3 years, you went from a senior PMM to a director of PMM. For anyone that's listening to this conversation, seeing growth like that, it's like you were one step away from VP, or and correct me if I'm wrong, the CMO title. So what prompted you to go out on your own? Like you got it. You got the 9 to 5. You're in Southern Utah. You're 30 minutes away from Zion. It sounds like you've reached the pinnacle of PMM career success, and you're like, I'm going to do this for me now. I'm curious to hear more about that. Like what? Yeah. Like how come?
Yeah, I'm basically like Michael Jordan walking away from my career, and everybody's what? Just kidding. I would never say that I'm.
And then going to play baseball and then be like, no, don't do that no more.
Yeah, no, I think it's a couple things, as it always is. So yeah, I made a pretty quick one. I switched into product marketing and then very quickly was able to grow my career. I think in my instance, as in all instances, it's like a combination of hard work and luck. And that's all it ever is when you see a very quick trajectory like that. I think we all see the LinkedIn posts like, oh, I made it to CMO in 5 years and here's how I did it. And in the back of our minds, we're all thinking like, okay, sure. And I'm not going to BS you like that. It was totally a combination of hard work and luck. I had some really great leaders, some really great bosses who really hooked me up with the resources I need to fill in the gaps in my career that I had in those times. And they were willing to mentor me and teach me and put me in the positions that I needed to be in order to grow. I also think I experienced a ton of growing pain during that time, like a ton of growing pain. I had excellent leaders, like I just mentioned, and I was had excellent opportunities. I was also in some pretty toxic opportunities and some pretty toxic positions that were painful at the time, but really taught me what I didn't want and what I didn't want to be as a leader, and the situations that I didn't personally thrive in. I think the other thing too is that when you are the first head of product marketing into a startup, you live like 3 years in the span of 6 months. You're doing everything all at once, and you are practicing all of your skills all the time and stumbling all the time, and then picking yourself right back up to finish the race. And sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not, but you're always learning. And I think that's what I see when I look back on that time is so much growing pain, so much learning, so much opportunity, so much luck, so much hard work. And it really put me in the position that I needed to be in order to decide what I wanted to do next. And to your point, I was in a position where I was able to say, okay, what do I want? So I'm looking at the VPs and CMOs that I'm working with, and I'm thinking, okay, I can have that in maybe, let's say, 2 to 5 years. That could be for me. I could stay where I'm at and just maybe cool my heels for a second, because I have had this period of like incredible growth and incredible opportunity and tons of hard work. I also have 2 young kids, so I'm like taking that into the mix as well as someone who wants to be like very present for their growing up. They're starting to play sports, and I'm like wanting to be on the sidelines and at their practices and cheering them on and all those things. And I'm just like feeling the burnout that we were all feeling at that time. Post-COVID, we're all starting to hear rumblings of layoffs, and everybody I knew at that time was starting to think, what am I going to do if I get laid off? What's the next move for me? How do I make myself like layoff proof, which I think is a fallacy, but we're all trying. We're all trying to control the future as much as we can. And I got to the point where I realized that for me at this time in my life, I wanted to take my career by the reins. I wanted to have more control than I felt like I was experiencing at in-house opportunities that I had. I wanted to be the one in the driver's seat of the projects that I took on and the projects that I chose not to take on. I wanted to be able to like say yes to 50 hours a week very intentionally when I want to, but I wanted to be able to say no and turn down the heat on my career and say, I want to work 20 hours a week for the next month because my kids are out of school for the summer and we want to go take some family trips. I wanted to be able to be more intentional. I wanted to be in control of that a little bit. And I think sometimes when people hear those things, it might trigger this idea of, oh, I'm like working from the beach and not really working and like logging off. But I think for me, intentional meant engaging where I see the most meaning and the opportunities that feel like the most ripe for growth and for just forward movement for me, and maybe turning down the ones that don't. And so that's why I chose to go the fractional route when I did.
I love that. I love the fact that you made the jump and you were able to prioritize, as you said, your career by the reins. What's one misconception that you had regarding to going fractional?
Yeah, I think there were a lot. I didn't really know. I didn't really talk to anybody who had gone fractional before I just did it. And that's very indicative of my personality. When I make a decision, I'm like, I don't need any more information. I've made the decision. I'm done. I'm doing it. Much to the chagrin of maybe my husband and the people around me who are like, hey, catch me up. What are we doing here? What's going on? And so I think I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to handle my accounting or bookkeeping. Still don't, honestly. My husband helps me handle that. So again, back to the luck of having great people around me. I didn't really understand how to pitch myself, back to what we talked about before. I had a lot of great practice, but I didn't connect those dots until 6 months in. Oh, okay, this is what people are looking for. And I had to try a lot of different ways to pitch myself. And I'd love to talk more about that maybe a little bit later on, because I've learned a lot that I think could help some folks. I didn't understand really like how I'm not very good at saying no, if we're being honest, and I haven't been until maybe the last 6 months. Yeah, I see some of us in the room are raising our hands. I think maybe that's a hallmark of product marketers. I think there's a specific personality, but that's another hot take we could talk through. I also think I didn't understand really like how to just manage an ongoing freelance career. I was like, oh, this will be a nice like gap year in my career almost. And then I started seeing people that are like, oh, I've been freelancing for 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And it's all great and it's all happening, and learning that how people are managing the ups and downs in these things. But yeah, I'm into my second year now and still learning a lot.
That's incredible. Let's go back to that point real quick here, because I know for Gavin, myself, and like Eric, in different capacities, we're in the similar place, like of going fractional, like completing year one here. And there was something you said here earlier, and I want to peel that back a bit. Is that for a lot of product marketers who are either in-house, most of them are already being misunderstood in what they do. Mm-hmm. Now introduce a fractional product marketer, where if someone's evaluating and they don't have a clear understanding, it can be very easy that person becomes a catch-all role where you're doing things from like messaging, positioning to sales enablement. Earlier, you mentioned like having that flexibility of choosing the projects you wanted to take on. So I'm curious, when you are evaluating like opportunities, go back to that discovery process you're walking us through. How are you defining the scope of the project? How are you protecting yourself and your time so that you don't walk out of that conversation with 8 different deliverables that would be best suited for a marketing team rather than one fractional PMM?
Yeah, definitely a lesson I've learned the hard way a couple times. And so I think that my stumble be your gain. So I think there's a couple things. One, depending on the person that I'm speaking to, if it's a founder or like a general CMO, or even sometimes like a general marketer, I actually don't call myself a product marketing freelancer. I don't actually use the term product marketing in those conversations at all, unless they use it first with me. Even if they use the term first with me, I actually say, what does that mean to you? I want to deconstruct what they understand about product marketing. I will then, after maybe that first conversation, say, okay, so here's what I bring to the table. This collection of skills falls under the umbrella of product marketing. And I'll do a little bit of education, especially if that person's, like I mentioned, VC, founder, even like sometimes I work with VP of revenue, things like that. So those people that may not, they've heard the term product marketing, but they may not specifically know like the ins and outs of it. Even like old school CMOs, like I mentioned, they may not know the ins and outs of product marketing. The things that I do say is I just basically lead with value. And I think that goes back to messaging best practices. I say, here's what I'm going to bring to the table for you. Here's the types of projects that I've completed. And here's some quotes from my customers that show that value. So I don't really get lost in specific terms, because I think when we stick to those vague terms, that leads to misunderstanding and miscommunication, because a lot of people think they know what that means and they won't clarify with you. So I have to do the clarifying for all of us. That goes for things like go to market or whatever too. I'll always ask, oh, you're saying you want someone to lead go to market motions. What does that mean to you? What are some specific tasks you'd like this person to take on? So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is I'm incredibly specific about what I do and also what I don't do, down to like the follow-up sheet that I give to people that I send out after that initial conversation, that includes like pricing and some of the general terms that I put in my contracts that I want people to be aware of. I say, just so we're clear, here's a list of things that I do. Here's a list of things that I don't do that often people are confused about. I don't do growth marketing. I don't manage your Google ads. I don't manage your social media. I don't update your website. I do all of those things. And as I stumble into those things where people are like, oh, I thought you were going to do this for us, I add it to the list as something that I don't do. And I make my list of things that I do very like valuable, and that's just as long as the things I don't do, but I just want to be incredibly specific there. I think the third thing, and I think we will want to get into this a little bit more in depth, but I think it's also in the way that I structure my pricing and the way that I charge for my time and my packages. And the way that I'm talking about like what they're paying for and the value that they're going to get for it, that also determines the type of work that I'm getting and the way that people see me as a partner versus just an order taker or someone that they can just be like, hey, shove that off onto Megan's plate. She'll take care of it.
Such a good tip. What is it for you? And I feel if we have that approach, it just makes things so much simpler. But I feel like part of it is a bit counterintuitive, right? Mm-hmm. When I do messaging for like software company, I'm always like, this is a category. So just by default, I'm like, I'm a product marketing consultant or I'm a marketing expert or stuff like that. But those terms, especially product marketing and just marketing terms, are so vague and everyone has a different definition. So just asking, what is it for you? And I love the idea about, I don't do this, I do this. I feel like it's automatically from the get-go. You make sure you don't fall into the caveat of, okay, I need to manage like 16 different Google Ads campaigns and I hate doing that. And it's just completely outside of the scope.
Yeah, but it's scary to do that sometimes too, especially when you're first starting out. Maybe you don't have a pipeline. Maybe you're figuring out what it is you do and don't like to do. So saying, oh, I don't do that, I'm not the right person for you, it puts like a knot in my stomach just thinking about it. But it's like you have to build up the tolerance to doing that. I think the thing that's helped me to be able to do that too is I have a whole spreadsheet of freelancers in all different types of specialties. So I'm still able to be helpful to that person and say, let me send you 3 people that I think you should talk to who aren't me, but are in this specialty. If you ever do need X, Y, and Z, please reach out. I'd love to be the person to help you. It doesn't sound like that's what you need right now, so let me pass you off to someone who can help you. So it turns into not just no, shut the door. It's, hey, I can still be consultative to you and still leave a good taste in this person's mouth and stay in touch, but not get myself in a position to be doing work that's going to frustrate me and them.
Megan, my goodness. You said it before that product marketers are marketers, but y'all, I have to say, I'm like, Miss Megan Pratt ain't no marketer. I'm like, the way you are breaking it down, like setting boundaries, because I think one thing that really resonates with me, what you said here, is that for some of us that are like fall within the marketing bucket, being the ability of saying, no, this is not what we're going to focus on right now. This is not the priority. And it feels, and I've been in a specific situation where I've said that before. I'm like, this is not the priority. And I've gotten penalized for that. Hearing this, it's a very refreshing take. I just wanted to just add that.
Yeah, totally. And I've been that person too. And you get branded as contrarian or not a team player, all of those things. And I take issue with kind of like that branding of like, by saying no or setting boundaries, you're not a team player. I don't think that's the case. And I think it's okay to know that other people will brand you that way. And then for me, I've just learned how to communicate it. I've learned how to get around that branding and how to say no without saying no. And so for me, that's where, like I was saying, being able to hand someone off to someone else and still be helpful comes in, because then it's not a no, it's like a, let me help you in another way. I think internally when I'm saying, no, this isn't a priority, I'll say things, I just ask a lot of questions and I let other people come to the no themselves and say, oh, I thought the priority was X, Y, and Z. Has that changed? If so, I'd love to catch up on that. Oh, I thought we were going to do this, but now it sounds to me like you're saying A, B, and C. Is that true? And just let people be the one to say, I guess you're right. Priorities did change. Or no, actually, you're right. I just got myself in a flurry. Let's head down the path that we were on. So,
do you find that position is easier as a fractional than an actual in-house? Having that discussion and letting them guide themselves to their own no?
I do. And I think the stakes are lower for saying no as a fractional, if we're being honest, because any one of my clients at any given time doesn't take up more than like a quarter of my income. So if that client at the end of the day says, we don't like that you told us no, and they leave, that sucks. But it's also, I still have 3 other clients that are but when you're in like a full-time role and you say no, and they don't like that, and then they fire you, that's your entire livelihood, right? So there are higher stakes. And I think so I fully recognize that. And that's one of the things I really like about being a freelancer. Again, back to taking things by the reins and being a little bit more in control, being able to set those boundaries and say no. That's incredibly appealing to me about being a freelancer. And I wish that I was actually right before this drafting a LinkedIn post about this exact thing. So stay tuned, folks, or maybe it'll already be posted by the time we get around to this episode. But I wish that more in-house people would learn the skill of saying no. I wish that a lot of in-house people would manage their careers as if they were freelancers. Because at the end of the day, if these layoffs have taught us anything, it's that any of us could be let go at any given time. And if we're seeing our careers as if we are a freelancer, as if we are fractional, and we maybe have other pots simmering on the stove at any given time, or we're thinking about what's next, or we're putting in place those boundaries, we're just like putting our 9-to-5s in the position that they deserve to be in our minds. We are happier, our work gets better, and in the inevitable event that we get laid off, because it's going to happen to almost everybody, you're a lot less likely to be like financially, emotionally, and just like very physically impacted by it. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Ooh, no, stay
climb
on
back
this
up
soapbox, because I don't know what she don't need to climb back up, because she's been on it for a minute, and we are here for it, because that piece around just saying no, Megan. I was thinking about that earlier today too. Ironically, about like in the lens of LinkedIn posts, because when you're fractional, you always ask yourself, how do I build a pipeline? We can talk more about that, but it was something I learned like when I read in a book, and I think it was Never Split the Difference. It was that when you say yes to everything, you're saying no to something else. And that always stuck with me. And I just really love that piece. And I think this is your signal right now. Don't stop at that post. Write that book. And I'm like, yo, I know we will buy it. We even got the title for you. You could be called "What's Changed" by Megan Pratt. And you know
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'll get to writing. I'll open up a Google Doc.
I think you've really just opened up a really cool piece that we have not touched on, and hits me like super hard because I have, very similarly to you, it causes me great frustration with the limited amount of control you get in an in-house situation, and that comes in variety of different forms and fashions. But
Totally.
like, I know me as a person would do a great deal and does do a great deal better when I can just put up those boundaries and people can respect those boundaries without
Yep.
that little seed of doubt, seed of anxiety saying what are the repercussions of this. And I think pretty clearly stated it. It's like a culture thing, and it's not just like typically isolated to a business. I think a lot of us are naturally yes people, and so we naturally want to say yes, even though we know it's wrong. And yeah, you've given me a lot to think about after that, in terms of particularly how I build boundaries, respect boundaries, and make sure my own boundaries get respected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we're going to be working for most of our day, most of our lives, we might as well turn it into something that we enjoy, or at least that doesn't make us just want to lay on the couch and watch The Office reruns in our free time. I want to be enjoying my career for a long time. I want to be someone who finds meaning in my work. I want to be someone who's like adding value and seeing that value. And in order to do that, I have to be able to say no to some things. I have to be able to prioritize. I have to be able to put in place, ask those questions that I was talking about, understand where the priorities are leading. And I don't know if it's because I have ADHD and I just have to know why things are the way that they are, or if it's just like a skill that I've developed after doing it wrong. Probably a little bit of both, but here we are. And I do think it's actually turned into something that makes me a really good fractional / freelancer, because I can't, back to your point about is that easier as a fractional / freelance person, it is nice for them, I think, to have someone like me asking those outside questions that maybe like the employees there are thinking but aren't able to ask. I think that's one of the powers of having an outside consultant, is like calling out the things that just become the water that we swim in, and being able to say, do we want to fix this, or are we okay with the way that it is? And then helping to propose solutions.
Quick question for you, Megan, is that for someone listening to this right now, there's been a term that's been floated around of golden handcuffs of, hey, I work a 9 to 5 and I see Megan Pratt comes into our organization, does consult. I'm like, damn, I want to do what Megan's doing.
Yeah.
But the first question that comes to mind is that I quit this job. I do what you do, Megan, but I'm like, I don't have a pipeline. Right. So I think that's one big question is I'm curious to hear your standpoint on is that pipeline. How do you build that as a fractional product marketer? I'm curious to hear what was your approach when you started, when you kicked that off?
Totally. Yeah. And I really connect with the feeling of golden handcuffs. I want to make it clear that I did not make this jump without it feeling like actual cliff jumping. Like, it was scary. It's always going to be scary to make a big jump like this. I have been the primary breadwinner for my family for the last several years. My husband has a great job, but a lot of our income comes from me. And so I had to be intentional about this. And I knew I had to be intentional, even with all of that luck that I talked about, even with all of the support system that I have in my husband and in coworkers who are cheering me on, and mentors who are cheering me on. It still is a scary feeling, even if all the pieces are falling into place. And I think I did a couple of things. One, like I said before, I'm the type of person that when I make a decision's made, I'm doing the thing, I'm going to figure out how to make this thing happen. So that was the mindset that I went into this with. Two, I started freelancing before I I got laid off from my 9 to 5 role. So I started about 3 months before. And all I did was I am in a couple product marketing / marketing communities. I have my LinkedIn presence, and I reached out to my network of folks that I have developed over the years and just said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. here's the type of projects that I really am interested in doing. If you know anybody at all, feel free to send them my way and I'm happy to chat. From those conversations, I had probably about 5 of those conversations. From those, I got one contract that turned into 5 hours a week of work. And that's how I quantify like my contracts, by the way, is I quantify like how many hours per week am I going to spend on this thing. I don't necessarily communicate that to the client at all times, but that's how I quantify it in my own mind. So I'm thinking about, okay, this is about 5 hours of work. This is great. I'm going to try this out. I'm going to see how this goes. I got another one. Pretty soon I'm starting to think, okay, is this the tipping point? Is this not the tipping point? I technically can handle my 9 to 5 on top of this, but do I want to be doing both of these? And it's at that point that the universe was like, hey girl, we are going to make the decision for you. And then I got laid off at that point. So I got laid off in November and then publicly launched my freelance practice in, I think it was January or February of the next year. So I had a couple of contracts that I just was like working. They were wonderful clients, able to work in a broad base with them. They were very friendly people too. So I was able to, they knew I was new to the freelance thing. I was able to figure things out on the go a little bit. And then I publicly launched things, got some referrals. And that first year was a little bit of a whirlwind of like ups and downs. There were times when I had one client. There were times when I had 6 or 7 and I didn't know how I was going to get all the work done. But all in all, everything shook out to better than I could have asked for it, to be honest. I did not expect for my first year to go the way that it did. I expected to definitely have to take a hit in income, definitely have to be a little bit more conscious about finances, definitely have to be pretty stressed about where am I going to get my next client from. But I, to be honest with you, have been very pleasantly surprised at the demand for the type of freelance product marketing work that I'm putting out there, and very pleasantly surprised at what people are like willing to invest in this type of work. So I guess that's like a note to anybody considering this, that yes, it's incredibly scary, but at the bottom of the cliff jump that you feel like you're diving off of, the water is deep and the water is nice and cool and it's great out here. So if you're at all considering, take the leap would be my feedback.
That's awesome. That's motivating too.
Yeah.
I know I'm feeling juiced up right now. Like I'm all excited. I'm all excited. Give me 7 clients I can say no to. That's what I want. After this call.
You're just like in the mirror. No.
Yeah, I want 7 of them no, and I want 3 of them to say, we'll see you. And the other 4 to say, thank you. I needed that no today.
It's a little bit empowering. I do have to admit.
I know. I'm getting this vibe off you. I'm getting this vibe like very similar in how we approach things. And I totally get it. And I want to say I very much appreciate your confidence to take that leap. I know all 3 of us are in varying degrees of the same situation, and it is so cool to hear it and the confidence that I hear and how you approached it, but still acknowledging it wasn't like taking a step out your front door. It was more like stepping out of a plane. So super cool, super inspiring.
Confidence, delusion, whatever we want to call it, both.
Yeah.
A little bit of craziness. Yeah. And to second what Eric said too as well. To second what Eric said too is that it really understands it's not an easy transition. And I think for myself, like 3 weeks ago, we had Emma Stratton. We were talking with her and we're like, I was just like, Emma, I'm like, I just got off a therapy call. I'm like, I'm burnt out. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I think when you were saying earlier of like those peaks and valleys, that's one thing I resonated.
Yeah. Yeah. What's hilarious too is, so I started my like reaching out to potential like freelance clients, got a couple. At that point, I was like balancing the two. I reached out to a therapist and I was like, I got to get a better relationship with work. That was my primary thing. Like, I've got to have a better relationship with this. And I can't tell people no. I don't know how to tell people no, but I'm frustrated when I say yes. Everybody's like running rampant over my boundaries, but am I really putting boundaries or am I making a ton of requests of people and they're just like not respecting those and whatever. And then before I was on the wait list and before I could even get in with her, the universe made the decision for me. So I like showed up to my first session and was like, that problem took care of itself, but also how do I set better boundaries and how do I say no and all of that stuff. So just like total transparency, like these skills of saying no and putting in place boundaries, like they are incredibly helpful in my career. And these are skills that I've absolutely had to develop. I did not come into my career or like adulthood knowing how to do these things. In fact, it's been quite the opposite in most of my life, but I do see the value in them. And now that I am like on the path, I'm like evangelical for boundaries. Like I will tell anybody and everyone, like, hey, have you heard about this thing called saying no? Because it's glorious. So that's my platform.
Megan, I have one question for you, and Gab, I'm curious what questions you might have too before that we close out. But wanted to revisit a comment you mentioned here earlier in our conversation about common gaps in product marketing. And now that you have been working on outside looking in with different teams, specifically in product marketing, what are some of the common gaps you've seen in product marketing teams that if I was a product marketing working in-house that I have my blinders on, I might not be aware of that I should keep cognizant of and maybe work on to being like maybe in a position like yourself?
Yeah. I think one that I notice a lot is just having a very clear launch plan, a very clear go-to-market plan. If anybody wants one that gets you started, I have one in a spreadsheet that I am more than happy to share. Find me on LinkedIn. I will send it right over. I'm happy to send it your way. But I think more product marketers need to be able to say, this is how we do launches here. This is how much time a launch takes. Here's the activities that need to be involved with this. Here are the people that need to be involved with this. And here's how we structure these things. So one of the first things I did at Alice when I was the head of product marketing there is I came in and I said, hey, there are 3 different tiers of launches. Each of these has a different time frame. So if this is a tier 1 launch, we're rolling out the red carpet. We also need 2 months to be able to execute all of this. Here's all the activities we're going to be doing. Here's the launch team. Here's how we're kicking this off. Product team, I have to have a product brief. I have to understand X, Y, and Z in order to launch this. And then I made that clear to everybody. So I went on like a tour, like a talking tour, and presented this to leadership, development, product, sales, my boss in marketing. Everybody understood how we do launches here, why we do things the way that they do, what they were going to get out of it, and why we were like restructuring things. And then we just marched through the motions. And we are very clear about what's inbounds and what's out of bounds, what will be prioritized for later, maybe a fast follow if we want to include something else. And then after every launch, we would have a little bit of like a, what are we stopping, starting, and continuing? What did we like? What didn't we like? How are we going to optimize this? So I think that's one thing that like, it's just a basic project management skill. But I think it's something that we don't get in a lot of different other places, like that cross-functional work of bringing something to life, understanding how to speak the different languages of the different teams. I think that's one thing. I think another thing I've noticed, and I've seen a lot of people talk about as well, is in a lot of the product marketers that I work with or talk to, there's almost like an allergy to writing or like maybe a fear around writing a blog post or writing a web page. And I think there's like this mystification around how to write something. There's a lot of advice out there too about how to write well. And so I think a lot of product marketers try to stay away from it and say, oh, I'm not a writer. We have to get a content marketer in here. Somebody else needs to do the writing, but I'll tell them what we're supposed to be writing. I wish more product marketers would just maybe take a writing course or read some of Emma's work. You brought up Emma Stratton earlier. She has fantastic resources out there about messaging and writing. I think she's one of my go-to resources. Read some of April Dunford's work, basic positioning, but she also talks about writing in her most recent book. Just like looking at good blog posts and good web pages and thinking like, how could I emulate that? I think that is something that, especially as like a startup product marketer, you've got to be able to just pull out of your arsenal, even if your writing's not perfect, even if it's not going to be winning anybody any journalism awards. Let's just put the words on the page and be able to formulate a good story from beginning to end. I think that's another thing that I'd recommend a lot of product marketers do.
That's awesome. And I think this is something that we covered, Zach, in a newsletter or something. The fact that there's a gap. Like if you understand positioning, if you understand messaging, ultimately you should be able to a certain level of copy. That doesn't mean it will be like the perfect, like approved version, but at least you understand all of the pieces of that whole funnel of how do I start with where are we positioned in the market up until, okay, so this is how we actually write to convert people or have their attention or everything else. So I think that's a very solid tip. And yeah, I think we saw, as you said, like shying away because there's in large organizations, you try to write something. I know in enterprise, I tried to write stuff and it was, oh, no, don't bother. We have content writers. And then I'm seeing the results and you're the subject matter expert, all the pieces. So then it's just become micromanagement work on making sure the copy is right. And then they understand like the core pillar of the key messages you want to put. But oftentimes it's just better to just write a damn copy and then people will improve it.
Yeah, and even if you're not the one that's going to be writing the final product, if you know how to write, you can communicate with your writers better. Just like if you know how to put together a good Google Ads campaign from like the very basics, you know how to talk to your growth marketer and say, use their lingo and be able to speak to them and just get things done better. But yeah, I think just knowing the basics of all of these disciplines can be really helpful.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you said earlier, Megan. Like that third like value of a product marketer is just like that storyteller audience being like connector of the dots and having that domain expertise of writing to communicate to different audiences. Gab mentioned like we had Julian on last season, and he mentioned is write that V1 copy. Heck, even Amazon, where most companies want to emulate all their practices, even their layoffs, which they probably should stop doing that. Bezos popularized the idea of like for every launch, write the press release first because you want to give that vision, you want to give the parameters of what that might look like. So plus 1,000 to that piece of writing, and even like just the launch plan, because just we all say it on LinkedIn, if you don't have if you fail to plan to fail, let's get that clarity. And you mentioned that before. Okay, everyone has a different perception of go to market, like getting down to the nuts and bolts. So just love everything you said in that piece here. More reason for you to write that book. I'm like, we in your corner here.
I love it. And if you can be the person giving people that clarity, whether it's here is what we want in a blog post or here's what's going to happen in the launch, we as human beings just like love clarity and we gravitate towards the people that can provide us that clarity. So yes. It makes you indispensable, whether it's as a freelancer or as an in-house person trying to build your career. If you are the person, I saw this post the other day that was like, maybe it was a tweet, but it was like, you will be shocked at how much you can grow your career if you're the person Googling things. And I think that goes for if you're the person answering the questions, if you're the person providing the clarity, if you're the person that's willing to just say, yes, here's how we're going to do this thing. Often you'll find that people might have questions, but they're not really going to fight you on it because people love clarity.
Yes.
That's powerful. You said earlier that people can find you on LinkedIn and get a resource on go-to-market. Where can people get more of you, get more of your LinkedIn, get more of your resources?
Yeah, LinkedIn is where I share things most often. I haven't been very good at sharing a lot there lately. I'm pretty busy with my clients, but I do share things. When I have the thoughts, I share them on LinkedIn. People are also willing to slide into my LinkedIn DMs in obviously the least creepy way possible, please. But yeah, let me know if you want that LinkedIn, the GTM resource. Happy to share that out. Productmarketinghouse.com is my website. If you want to learn more about that, I offer freelance services. I'm also a product marketing coach as well, working with people who are either the first head of product marketing and just want that outside ear, maybe the senior product marketer who wants to be the head of product marketing and figure out how to get there. Maybe you're a marketer who wants to be a product marketer. I coach all those different types of people as well. So if you want more nuanced and unique and customized kind of chats like we're sharing here, that's a great place to find that as well.
Amazing.
This has been a truly incredible conversation, Megan. There's so much that I feel like we all personally learned that especially just like when you mention of just saying no, because I can think back to some SOWs that I have floating around right now. I'm like, damn, I got 8 different deliverables on this. I should have been better with saying no. But the reality, but it was really, but hearing you think about being more strategic, like really taking control of your career back, whether if you are in-house or if you do choose the freelance route, I think there's a lot of lessons that we can take with either path that we are on or we decide to take. So just really want to say thank you for what you've all shared with us in this time, and just really excited just to continue to watch your career flourish here.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, the feeling's very much mutual. I've really loved hanging out, chatting, learned a lot from you guys as well. And yeah, looking forward to more episodes of the podcast. More cool hoodies.
I think personally we've learned more from you. I think we learned more from you than you. So we got to balance it out at some point.
We have the winning bet.
I don't know about
that. Definitely, guys. But Megan, thank you again for everyone that's listening to the conversation right now. This is another episode of We're Not Marketers, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.